Tens of thousands of men, women and children are trapped in some of the fiercest fighting in Sri Lanka's deadly civil war. Many are dying in the crossfire or artillery exchanges that are a daily occurrence. And chances of a peace deal anytime soon look virtually non-existent. Well, the Sri Lankan government has made a desperate plea for safe havens for the civilians caught up in the violence in the east. Well, Colombo wants the International Committee of the Red Cross and foreign monitors to persuade the Tamil Tigers to help. Between 30 to 35,000 people, mostly minority Tamils, have been displaced so far, trapped by the renewed civil war between the Sri Lankan military and the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. And more than 1,200 civilians have been killed this year alone. The rebels say by artillery fire, while the government accuses the Tamil Tigers of using them as human shields. Well, the danger zone is the eastern rebel stronghold in the district of Batikola, where civilians are subjected to indiscriminate shelling. Thousands of people have fled to Kantale and Varakai in the northeast, where they're living in makeshift camps, Buddhist temples and schools. Well, in a moment, we'll be talking live to a Sri Lankan government spokesman. But first, Al Jazeera's John Cookson was recently in eastern Sri Lanka, where he met some of the Muslim refugee families.
Their village destroyed, neighbours murdered, livestock killed. This family, one of thousands of Sri Lanka's Muslims for whom home is a small fire and some plastic sheeting. Not much, but at least they feel relatively safe.
We were being bombed. We had no choice but to leave. We were terrified. We walked a long way to get away from the fighting.
The Muslim population has never taken sides in the decades-long conflict between the Tamil Tigers seen here and Sri Lankan armed forces. I joined a Sri Lankan army patrol and headed with them into the danger zone to see what the refugees were escaping from. Well, we're on the road to Sampur now with the 222 Brigade of the Sri Lankan army. These guys are often targets of the Tamil Tigers. I want you to just have a look at the kind of countryside that we're rolling through. It's perfect guerrilla countryside now, time and time again. The Tigers, the Tamil Tigers, have attacked the Sri Lankan army. No wonder the Muslim families fled. As we rolled into Sampur, the tension here was palpable. It just didn't feel safe. The human casualties from both sides have been removed, but wounded and dying livestock lay where they fell, cut down in the crossfire. Sri Lanka's special forces told me the Tamil Tigers have put up a fierce fight.
Sampur battle was a tough battle. They were well dug in. I killed 8 of them. They fought well, but we were better.
As the Sri Lankan army retakes each town and village from the Tamil Tigers, the Muslim families who live there are ordered back. We travelled with Kamadei Lebey and his family as they went home after weeks in a refugee camp. Fleeing from fighting and somehow keeping the family and possessions together is now routine for Sri Lanka's Muslims, as are the joyous reunions. But they know fighting can sweep their village again as the Sri Lankan conflict continues relentlessly, leaving a generation of Sri Lankan Muslims for whom life means enjoying time together when they can and running for sanctuary when the bombs begin to fall. John Cookson, Al Jazeera in East Sri Lanka.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Sri Lankan Army spokesman, Brigadier Prasad Samarasinghe. I started by asking him whether the government would consider halting artillery attacks in the area, as the UN is urging.
Well, during the last week, they were firing artillery towards the school, where the security forces could not retaliate due to the civilian population in the Wakar area, more than 3,000 civilians. So security forces immediately told the Sri Lankan monitoring mission, then the United Nations organizations, those who are in Sri Lanka in Batikola district, as well as the International Committee of Red Cross members, to get these civilians away from the LTT areas where the fighting is going on. So since they are firing artillery from that area, so security forces were compelled to retaliate. So that request was made.
There have also been suggestions that military operations on major roads like the A15 road has contributed to cutting off the civilians. Are you reviewing your actions in order to allow civilians to get out of conflict areas?
Definitely, the security forces, even today, there was a discussion with the SLM and ICRC to get these civilians away from these conflict areas. In fact, the LTT, they started all this after 5 years of ceasefire on the 1st of August, attacking those civilian areas in Muttur, Tinkamali South, where the A15 road runs through. And today also, there were 1,227 civilians came from those areas, not on the main road, by using the boats and the jungle paths and jungle lanes towards common control area from the LTT control areas.
And how do you respond to the criticisms from some of the international truce monitors who say that your government, your army, is restricting their access to conflict zones?
There are two incidents during the last 5 days. One is a place called Serunura Kallar, where the Sinhalese settlements are there, and the army control is there. So LTT, they were firing artillery towards that area, and it fallen into a school also. And these the government forces requested the monitors to go there, but monitors, they wanted a security guarantee from the government forces to go there. But of course, the LTT, they were firing from their controlled areas towards this area, which the government forces could not give a guarantee. So the forces has requested the SLMM, that is the monitors, to speak to the LTT and ask them not to fire.
And we invited the Tamil Tigers to talk to us on this program, but they declined to speak to us about the situation. Well, the High Court in Botswana has ruled that more than 1,000 Bushmen who have been wrongly evicted from their ancestral homeland in the central Kalahari Game Reserve. One of the world's oldest tribal groups, the San Bushmen, took the government to court after being evicted from the area in 1997. Kale Maestri watched the proceedings.
Basically, what the judges have decided is that the Bushmen were lawfully in possession of the Central Kalahari Game Reserve and the land on there, and that when government evicted them both in 1997 and 2002, those were unlawful and unconstitutional, so they are now free to return. The judges have also ruled that they won't need licensing permits to enter the reserve. They also won't need licensing permits to hunt. What the court found against them, though, is that they're going to have to stay there without basic services, that government is not obliged to render any particular service to them. And so there is a chance that they could return almost immediately. But there's still a few details that they would obviously need to work out with government in terms of exactly what kinds of conditions and what other terms they can live there on.
Kale Maestri reporting there from Botswana. Well, a series of bomb attacks has rocked the Iraqi capital, killing at least 15 people and leaving dozens wounded. In one of the worst incidents, 2 near-simultaneous blasts in a religiously mixed area of the city killed 5 civilians. It came less than 24 hours after a similar double bombing left more than 70 people dead. Sebastian Walker reports on a day of relentless violence in Baghdad.
Baghdad's cycle of mourning seems almost endless. In one part of the city, families collect their dead from hospital morgues after the previous day's bombing, which killed more than 70. In other districts, new attacks killed and maimed dozens more.
2 car bombs exploded during the rush hour. People were living their normal life when the attack happened.
The blasts came in quick succession to cause maximum carnage, and Iraq's security nightmare continues. The renewed violence is turning up the heat on Iraq's Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. He received his first visit from Washington officials since the Iraq Study Group report was published.
The level of confidence in the Iraqi army has gone up progressively over the last 6 months. I mean, not at a very steep, but there's been a nice steady increase and the overall feeling that Iraqis have as far as trusting and feeling that the Iraqi army can provide for their security.
That was an upbeat assessment from the US military.